You're listening to the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast, episode 168. Welcome to the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast. I'm your host, Paula Price, lawyer turned certified executive coach. This podcast was created to empower women lawyers just like you to create a life and practice you love. Join me every week for a break from the hustle so we can focus on you, what you truly want, and how you can create it. If you're over the overwhelm, done with putting out fires, and ready to redefine success on your own terms, you're in the right place. Ready for today's episode? Let's dive in. Let me ask you two questions. Question 1. Do you ever find yourself getting ready for work or a professional event? You go to your closet, look at the blazers, the button-up shirts, the skirts, the suit pants, the dresses, and tell yourself that you have nothing to wear? Question 2. Why does it matter? Chances are, if you find that there is a misalignment between the professional image that you want to project and the contents of your wardrobe, you feel frustrated and you may be losing a lot of time trying to piece together the right outfits. You may also be skipping out on events altogether simply because you have nothing to wear. If you can relate, you're not alone and you are absolutely in the right place because today we have a very special guest, Estelle Winsett, and she is here to talk about how to empower yourself through your personal style. Estelle was on the podcast previously. At episode 59, she shared with us how to design your career with style. Today, she's back to talk about how to empower yourself through your personal style. Since we last spoke with Estelle, she has transitioned full-time into her role as stylist for women lawyers. And she is here to talk to us about what it means to empower yourself through your personal style. She is going to share some common challenges that women lawyers face when it comes to expressing themselves through their personal style. And finally, she offers some practical strategies that you can apply right away to define your personal style and start creating a wardrobe that aligns with it. So without further ado, I am going to turn us over to our interview with Estelle. You are going to love hearing from her, and I'm excited to share this with you. Hello, Estelle, and welcome back to the podcast. It's so great to have you here today.
Thanks. It's so fun to be back again. I love it.
Amazing. Now, Estelle, before we dive in, it has been almost exactly 2 years since you were first on the podcast episode, and I would love it if you would update everybody on what you've been up to since then.
Sure. So the last time we spoke on the podcast, we were talking a lot about designing your career and how style was a piece of that. And at that time, I was still working full-time in my law firm position and doing side on the style. But since then, I have gone full-time in my style business for female attorneys. And gosh, it's coming on almost a year of me being full-time in that business, which is super exciting.
Amazing. Congratulations, Estelle. And so
Thank
excited
you.
to have you here diving into personal style. And to start things off, I would love for you to define what personal style means to you.
To me, personal style means the fullest expression of who you are and showing people what you stand for before you ever say a word.
I love it. And I love how everybody who is listening is thinking about their own personal style, right? Because I think it's such an individual statement. And I love that we're able to have this conversation here today so that everyone who has joined us can think about their own personal style and what they're going to take away from today's episode. I would love to know, Estelle, how one goes from attorney to stylist and what it was that sparked your interest initially in style.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think if you ask my mom, she was always fishing me out of the dressing room at probably age 5 when she would take my older sister shopping. So I've always loved style. But I have to say, I think law school was the death of my creative styling days because I was so focused on doing a good job and going through the on-campus interviews and being told, wear your black and gray, which I do think as a interviewee, it's not a bad tactic. But I kept that black and gray a little bit too long and was just very bored with my style. And really, it was later on, I think after I'd even stopped practicing law, that I got excited about style again. And it was just being introduced to a brand that I loved that was very colorful. It was a brand called Cabby. And it was a clothing brand that made really good clothes for women. And what I loved is that it fit women's bodies and it wasn't skimpily cut. And it was interesting and fun. And so it really just got me excited about expressing myself through style again and sort of got me out of this all black era that I'd gotten myself into.
Sorry, go on. I was just going to interject and say, I think this is such a great metaphor for what can happen to us in our lives, right? Where we have this passion as a 5-year-old, and then we kind of get pulled into life, right? And we're jumping through the hoops and checking off the boxes, and we lose sight of that. And so I just love that you have reconnected with this love of style that you've had within you. It's maybe been dormant for a little while, and now it's finally coming back out. So I just wanted to point that out and just celebrate that, because I think for so many of us, we rediscovered that a few years, a few years later on into life. And so I just love that. Anyhow, I interrupted. Please continue.
Oh, no, thank you. I love that I was able to reconnect with that as well. And if you had asked me 10 years ago, if I was going to be a professional stylist for women, I'd say, what are you talking about? So this was not necessarily in the cards. But now when I look back on it, it makes so much sense. And it really aligns with all the different pivots that I have taken in my career to where I feel like it's the summation of all of the different types of careers I've had into one in terms of what really drives me, which is empowering female attorneys. And it also relates to your career because it enhances your performance when you love the way you look and you're not fidgeting and you're able to really focus on your zone of genius. So it's really this interesting combination of different things that light me up, and they all kind of are wrapped it into personal style.
I love that. And just for the benefit of everyone who hasn't listened to the first episode, which I highly encourage everybody to do, it's episode 59, where you do talk about style and you talk about your own career. So when you talk about weaving together the different themes from what you've experienced, what comes to mind for me is your experience as a practicing attorney and then working more, I believe, in the recruitment side of it, the law school, the student advisory side of it, and then moving into professional development within a law firm. So what I see is you as a lawyer, mentoring lawyers, working with lawyers to develop themselves professionally, and now bringing into that whole equation the style component. And so you know the environment that women lawyers and other professionals are working in and how they can marry their personalities, like who they are apart from their professional identities, for example, with the work that they do. So I think that's what you're saying. You're nodding. I don't think people will be
sorry. Yes, I'm an avid nodder.
So is that kind of what you were thinking about? Like when you think about like how the different breadcrumbs have led to where you are now?
Absolutely. I think for me, early on when I started practicing law, I was really fortunate because I have a dad who practiced law. I have 2 older sisters who practice law. So I had a built-in support system through my family, but I knew that wasn't the case for everybody. And I really almost wonder if I think back to when I was practicing law, had life coaching been around or had we had more business coaching tools, maybe I would have stayed with it because I might have been able to manage my mind a little bit better. But for me at the time, it was not a sustainable type of career because I was having a really hard time separating work from home and knew I was starting a family. But I think in terms of breadcrumbs and how this led in a very logical way is that I wanted to help cheerlead other people. And it's interesting because cheerleaders come up a couple of times and I was not a cheerleader in high school, but what I'm an advocate for is just helping people who need those resources. You know, I was lucky to have them in-house, but so many lawyers don't have that. And especially when I was working in the law school setting, just seeing people not have that mentoring and not know how to position themselves or market themselves. And for me, there were just these tools that I learned along the way, you know, both in resume development and marketing yourself that way, but then also in how you could use style as a tool to empower yourself. Because as women, and of course, I think the female component is just my own personal experience, but as I've gotten older, even I've seen a lot of women go through even additional struggles due to age and not knowing how to navigate those in a stylish way and not wanting to feel outdated or behind the times. And so there's just a lot of different changes that women go through throughout their life. And I think it's important for us to evolve our style along with our career. And so that's kind of how it all ties together.
I love that. And you've mentioned a couple of times this idea of empowering women through personal style. So what does that mean to you?
Well, I find that if women are struggling with their style, it's the kind of thing that you may not realize it, but it takes up a lot of mind chatter. So, getting ready in the morning, worrying about what to wear, staring in front of your closet. For the average woman, stands 20 minutes in front of her closet trying to figure out what to wear. And that's not even necessarily finding something and liking it, it's just staring at your clothes. And then there's the second guessing of yourself. Again, I was fortunate to have an innate talent when it came to style. And then, of course, I went through all this training, but it's a skill set that not everyone has. And as women, we shouldn't feel bad if we don't happen to have that skill set. But I think that Wonder Woman complex, I think so many of us have, especially women lawyers, we're used to putting our mind to something and getting it done. But it's not necessarily the best idea to do that on certain skills that you might be better served off outsourcing them. Because if you were to take your hourly rate and determine what you could be billing your time for, it probably would make a lot more sense to just outsource it to someone else to do it for you. I think I answered that question. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, we're talking about empowering women through style. And so you're
Gotcha.
talking about some of the challenges from the sounds of it that women have when they don't have a clear sense of what their personal style is.
Yes. So what I have found is the women who feel that they're not looking put together, if they feel like their body has changed, they don't know how to dress their body shape. And so while they're at work, they're in their mind, they're thinking about, oh, this really doesn't look right. Or they see someone else walk in the door at a deposition and they look head to toe amazing, which makes them feel more self-conscious about how they're looking. And it just takes up all of this focus that is running along in the background. Or another example I hear all the time, women get super stressed, and I get it because I've been there too. When you get invited to something that has a very strange dress code, sometimes people are trying to be cutesy, like holiday festive. And then that causes a lot of stress if it's a law firm party or if it's a client reception and there's this murky dress code. It can just send people, off into, tailspin, not knowing how to dress appropriately for that because they don't want to show up looking different from everyone else. And so it ends up occupying all of this time that they could be spent focusing on their work or on things they would prefer to spend their time on. I had a consult call with someone yesterday, and she just said, I've just decided that this is not my skill set and I don't want to spend any more time on it. So I'm going to give it to someone else who knows how to do this, because it really is sneaky how much time can be occupied in your brain worrying about what you're wearing without you ever realizing. If you were to actually do a time audit of all the different thoughts you had worrying about what to wear to an event, running out to the mall and trying to find something, calling a friend and asking what they're wearing, if you were to add up all of the point ones that you spend worrying about what to wear, it would probably surprise you how large of a number that is.
Yeah, I absolutely love how you've described it. I 100% can relate to that, right? Standing in front of your closet, just staring at it and thinking about, okay, what am I going to wear to this particular event? I know for myself, one of the challenges I've had recently is because I work so much from home and so little in person, when it's time to go to an in-person networking event, it is a real struggle, especially if it's in the evening, because then I have the added kind of lack of energy of having had a full day of puttering around at home, do my work here, gotten the kids fed, and then out the door. So that's part of it. But a big part of it too is just not feeling excited about anything that I have to wear, not feeling confident with anything that I have to wear. And so when you describe it, right, there's the time involved, there's that mental chatter involved, and then it holds you back, right? When you think about what happens, like if you can just close that gap, if you can just kind of do away with the loss of time, if you just feel confident, then what, right? And I think for me, that's where I see the real power. It's like, this is no longer an issue. I know I feel and look the way that I want. It's my style. And there you are. So I love this. And I think it is so relatable, whether or not we should feel this way, it is how so many of us feel. And so I think being able to have someone like you who can guide us and help us understand what is our own personal style, how do we want to express ourselves, and then how do we make that happen, right? Going from the concept, like what looks nice on Pinterest versus what we actually have in our closet that we can physically put on our bodies and wear out the door. So love it.
And sorry, just one more thing to add to that. Please. About the empowerment piece. What I always say is what you wear carries energy. And if you're wearing an outfit that makes you feel bad about yourself or that you're second guessing, then there's an energy of disgruntled, unhappy, unsettled that you carry with you throughout the whole day. And when you get dressed, it's the first thing you do in the morning. But when you put on an outfit that feels like you know it, you know that feeling when you're like, I love this outfit. Then you go out into the world, you go to the coffee shop and strangers will compliment you on your shoes. And then you get in the elevator and someone else compliments your earrings, and you make it up to your office at the beginning of the day and you're on fire because you feel good. You know, you look the part. And that to me is the energy you want to carry. And it's the energy that you can create by curating a very intentional wardrobe.
I love that. And Estelle, you are drawing last time we did a parallel between your career design and your personal style. And this time it's kind of like the opposite, because I feel like it's the same thing. Like when you've got that clarity about where you're going in your career,
yes.
much like your personal style, you're knocking it out of the park. People are giving you compliments on the way you do things. People are coming to you for your opinion, your advice, your expertise. And it just builds that feeling of confidence and expertise. And so I think these two things go hand in hand. So love it. Question for you as a stylist. And this is not meant to be a negative question, but I know we're all curious to know what some of the biggest mistakes are that you have seen when it comes to style.
Yeah. Kind of going back to my earlier point, I think as female attorneys, we're used to just putting our mind to something and getting it done. And so I think we're also natural problem solvers. So if we find that we're having trouble with our style, then we go to some of the sources that I found are not actually very helpful. But in our minds, we think they're going to be. An example would be doing a style subscription box. You know, you hear, oh, that's the answer. This is going to solve all of your problems. And so you kind of hang your hat on it. But then you get the box and it's either not tailored to you as a professional woman. You get ripped jeans from a stylist, I say stylist in air quotes, that says this is perfect for Friday at the law firm, where you're not going to wear ripped skinny jeans to the office at a law firm. And so it ends up being that not only what you're trying is not also not working, but it's actually putting you further behind because you're wasting all this time that's not going to be fruitful. And so there are the style subscription boxes. I think the other thing that is really hard is when we try to go on well-meaning friends who give us tips on things they like. And typically what happens in that scenario is you're getting a recommendation for something that does not fit your body shape. And so it looks great on your friend who has a totally different body shape than you do. Then you get it and you feel like, what's wrong with me? This doesn't look great. And as women, we blame ourselves when the actuality is you just chose the wrong silhouette for your body shape. There's nothing morally wrong with it. She just has a different body shape. And so when you work with someone one-on-one, they can help you understand how to dress your body shape. And so instead of just haphazardly shopping, thinking, oh, that'll look good, or seeing something on a model and it looks good on them, but you have a different body shape, really understanding the silhouettes that are going to be flattering. And so I think it's about trying to find solutions quickly, but then you kind of get what you pay for in those scenarios. And so I get really fired up about the style subscriptions because I feel like they really do an injustice with women and get people's hopes up. And then they don't deliver what they say they're going to. So I think that's a huge one.
Yeah. And that's so helpful, Estelle. As you're describing that, I mean, first of all, what came to mind for me is perfume, right? I think when something smells so nice on somebody else, this has happened to me.
Yes.
And so I'll ask somebody what they're wearing and then I'll run off to the drugstore and spray it on me. It doesn't smell right or I'm allergic to it. And the thing is with perfume, I never have like a moral judgment against myself that it doesn't smell good on me. Oh, there must be something wrong. But with
it's not because you're flawed.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But with style, I think sometimes we carry that internal judgment. And the second thought that came to mind for me is that one of the things that I've been told to do is to go and kind of look at what looks I like on other people. And it occurred to me as you were talking that I bet you that every single look that I've pulled off of the internet and thrown on a Pinterest board is probably not designed for my body shape. Like if I'm actually being honest about it, I'm like, yeah, it looks good on them, but I don't think it looks good on me. And I think we're going to get into that a little bit in today's conversation. But I think for everyone who is with us today, who's thinking about that, it's like, you know, that mannequin or that friend or that style that looks so great on somebody else, is it actually something that's going to look good on us? And if it doesn't, you know what I mean? Like we can save ourselves so much pain by not trying, not trying to be that person with their style, but to figure out what's most flattering for us. So this leads me to the next question, which is, what are some style wins? Like when you look around and you're thinking, okay, that person, they hit the nail on the head. What is that for you?
I think the biggest style win is wearing clothes that fit your body well. I think if you wear something that is well tailored and complements your body shape, it almost isn't even as important how much it costs, because I think the true mark of style is something that fits you really well. That being said, I always tell people to buy the highest quality they can afford, because I think then you're going to get into buying investment pieces that when you wear them over time, you're going to get the return on your investment because they're not going to fall apart. But I would say fit would be a definite win. Another win that I get very excited about is seeing the world through the lens of my clients, because when they come to me and I can tell how frustrated they are, and this has been a real pain point in their life, when we get to the end of the process and they have their outfits and they're getting dressed and they send me these text messages about getting so excited because someone said, hey, you're showing up and taking names, and, just feeling that power. It's so fun for me because that's what it's all about. And so I get to live kind of vicariously through my clients who are generous enough to let me know when they get these compliments and these wins. But it just reinforces why I'm doing this, which is so much more than the clothes themselves. But it's really feeling empowered and feeling ready to take on the world. When you can actually own a room and feel it, then to me, that's everything.
I love that. And I can imagine for everyone who's listening to our conversation that we each have a story, at least hopefully one story where we've had that moment, right? Where we've just felt really put together. We've felt really good and somebody has noticed, like we've got some sort of feedback from our environment, and that feeling, right? It's like electric. And then you get to have, it just builds your confidence, right? To go on and do something next that is really great. So
it also builds momentum. It kind of builds on itself. It's almost like the domino effect of, something is going wrong and you start your day feeling horrible with what you have on, then it kind of sometimes has a tendency to give momentum and go downhill. Whereas the other one where you're feeling good about yourself. And the other thing that is really important to mention is not only is it fun to have others recognize your empowered state or that you are looking the part, but it's even more fun, I find, to see your reflection in the mirror and not be upset, or to be washing your hands and look up and think, I really like this outfit. And so you also, it's not only the way others perceive you, but how you perceive yourself. And you get to change that and change the dialogue that's going on in your head, which probably before you liked your style was not super positive. But when you do feel good and authentic in who you are, it's a more positive tape running around in the background.
Yeah. And what I'm seeing, Estelle, is that the person that you're seeing in that reflection is aligned with how you see yourself, right? I think when we're trying so hard to emulate somebody else or be somebody different, we're never going to match that reflection that we see. Or if we're just not taking care of ourselves, we're going to see that reflection and we're going to see how we're not taking care of ourselves, versus when you see what you want to see, right? Your insides match your outsides. I think it's a win, right? It's just that feeling of, like you said, it's authentic. It's an expression of your personal style. So love it. You and I are probably about the same vintage. And you talked about those early days, right? When you went through your interviews, it was all black suits, gray suits, etc. So we're operating in the legal profession, right? A traditionally conservative place to be. And the style, I think, has traditionally been very conservative. It's, classically a male dominated industry. And I think, power suits and, for women for a long time, women's clothes were kind of like the tailored version or a more feminine silhouette of
oh my gosh,
outfit.
like that awful tie thing that we used to have that was like the male tie but smaller.
Oh gosh, I didn't even
just bad.
I think shoulder pads in the 80s. So it's just, so when you think about and then we went through the pandemic where basically everything just got thrown out the window, right? Because people weren't showing up in person. And I feel like that was when things really got shaken up. And now here we are in 2024. So from your perspective as a stylist, I would love for you to share what you think or how your approach to style or what you've seen in terms of style has changed since when you first started out as a lawyer.
That's such a good question. I think that there have become more and more options for women of professional style than there used to be when I first started practicing law. So there's been advancements that way. But at the same time, what's available in stores in terms of inventory, if you were to physically go to the mall and try to shop, the inventory for professional styles is less. And so I think that for women trying to navigate this, it's really confusing because all they see are the stores that are local. And so therefore they're buying things that everyone else has on, or they go in and they can't find anything in their size. But the reality is there's so much out there if you know what you're looking for. And that's what my job is when I'm working with clients, is to introduce them to new brands that are in alignment with whatever their style vibe is. And so I think it's exciting as a stylist to know all the different brands out there. And also, I think there's more size inclusivity in terms of clothes. I think there's more, just tons of different styles out there that fit different body shapes. But that, for someone who doesn't know how to handle it or navigate those waters, can be very complicated. Because for me, I'm like, oh, great, I can get really specific in what to recommend just for your body. But you're just trying to find a black skirt and you pull up Nordstrom and you have 200 options. So it's very frustrating to someone who's not well-versed in all those nuances.
Yeah. And that leads to the next question, Estelle, which is this idea of, okay, so we've got this traditional model, right, for what the legal profession is. We've kind of got this shift in how people are dressing. And then we've got this idea of personal style, right? We want to express ourselves authentically through the clothing that we wear. So how do you recommend balancing professionalism with self-expression?
Yeah, I think, well, first and foremost, I think your legal environment is paramount. If you're in a very conservative law firm, then there are going to be certain parameters that you need to stay within because you're representing the firm and their culture, you're representing the firm's clients. And so I think you want to be in alignment with that. But even within that, you can find ways to display your personality while still remaining professional. And that's really kind of my sweet spot of what I really love to help women do. It can be something as simple as jewelry, or it could be little details in a neckline. Maybe it's a little bit asymmetrical, and that could be a little bit on edgy, or maybe it's you're really preppy and you like to have a little bit of a bow or a ruffle of some sort. It's just finding those ways to feel more like yourself in clothes so that you're not wearing a quote unquote uniform that everyone in the law firm wears. But then if you're in different environments, you have a little more leeway. So for example, conferences, and I don't know if you've gone to a ton of in-person conferences, but they're a little bit less formal and it gives you some leeway in what you can wear. And you're not just limited to a suit. But again, like for me, I get excited about that. For a lot of people, that causes a lot of stress because it's so vague that anything goes. And so that's stressful for people.
That can be really stressful, right? Like what is the embarrassment of riches, right? We've got so many different options. It's hard to narrow down which one to actually go with. And just circling back, I think what you said is so important, right? To first of all, gauge the environment that you're in, right? If you're in a really traditional environment, if you're a lawyer who spends a lot of time in court and the culture where you practice is very conservative, we want to be respectful of that, right? I mean, we want to be respectful of the medium in which we're operating. And then I love what you're saying about finding ways to bring yourself into it, right? Whether it's relatively subtle, if that's the parameter that you're working in, or you might have more flexibility, right? Maybe it's at a conference, maybe it's the type of office you work in, right? If you've got more of a virtual firm or a firm that's, more progressive, or, just there's ways to marry both your own sense of style with the environment that you're working in. So I think that's really important for us to all focus on. And when you work with clients, right? So when we're thinking about the whole world out there, like here's all the different styles that you can have. How do you recommend that women start? Like when they're starting to define their own personal style, how do you approach that? As someone with a legal background who is, thinking in terms of structures and rules and process, what do you recommend for women who are trying to develop their own personal style?
Yeah. For me, I walk people through a 3-step process that creates what I call their authentic style blueprint. Because I never shop for anyone until we have gone through this, because we're all unique and we also evolve over time. And so our styles should too. And so we really need to start with what are our current preferences, or what's our style vibe that we want to go for. You're also curating this future version of yourself. And so sometimes that means leaving the old self behind and envisioning, what does my future self wear? How is she embodying her style, her career? How is she showing up in the world? And so the 3 parts that I like to include in this process are to understand your style preferences or vibe, to understand how to dress your body shape. And then the third piece of that is understanding what are your best colors, so that when you are looking for clothes, you're finding things that give you that extra glow up. Because when you wear clothes close to your face that are your best colors, it just makes you have that wow factor. And all it is a color that you're wearing. And so to me, I'm like, you might as well throw that into your arsenal of what you're wearing and when you choose things. And so those are the 3 places I start when I'm working with clients, and I help them understand, because you have to know your style vibe, because otherwise you're going to be feeling like you're wearing someone else's clothes or something that doesn't feel truly authentic to you. You need to learn how to dress your body shape because one of the biggest concerns women have when they come to me is feeling frumpy or feeling that they're either wearing something way too small or something way too oversized, but they're not able to find clothes that they feel are flattering to their body shape. So when you combine your style vibe, your body shape, and then you throw your best colors on there, then you're unstoppable.
I love it. In terms of vibe, Estelle, how would you describe that? Like if I'm trying to think of a style vibe, how do you approach that? Do you have any examples or what that might be?
Sure. I think a lot of times I try to ask my clients to look for style icons or people maybe they've seen on TV or in a movie whose style they've really enjoyed. And one person that comes up a lot is Kate Middleton. And so if I were to describe Kate Middleton's style, it would be classic timeless. When she wears something, you can't tell if the garment was purchased in 2000 or 2024. And that's the beauty of a timeless style is you can't put a timestamp on it. And it's the kind of thing that's going to stand the test of time. So those timeless pieces that you buy in high quality fabrics are going to really last you a long time. Another example that I often hear about is Claire Underwood from House of Cards. And if you remember her look, it was a little bit more tailored. It was a little more sleek, maybe had a little bit of sexiness to it, but not overt. And so that's a whole kind of almost edgy, polished look is the way I would describe that. And then, gosh, I feel like there's anything and everything in between. So when I'm working with a client, I try to figure out all those little pieces that make up her, because you might be someone who is classic with a slight edge, and so we don't necessarily fit neatly into one particular box or another, but that's what makes us unique. And when we can identify that, when I can help a client identify that vibe, it helps them have a litmus test for when they're going out to shop. Does this fit 3 words that I came up with? Like, for example, does this say classic, powerhouse, litigator, whatever your style mantra is. And then you can, when you're shopping and you hold up a garment and you ask, does it have that vibe? You either get a yes or a no pretty quickly. And that helps you decide, okay, this may be a cute skirt, but I'm looking for work clothes and this is not saying the message that I'm trying to send. So it has to go back. It hasn't earned its way into the closet.
Yeah, I love that. I think I've heard this before, and maybe it was from you, this idea of having 3 words that describe your style statement.
Yeah.
And I've done that for myself, and I find it is a really helpful filter in terms of just like,
yes,
does this fit the bill? And I think it tells you a lot about yourself, especially for lawyers who love words, right? When we get to define ourselves,
yes,
when we get to define our style, we get to know ourselves. Like, maybe it is that traditional edgy, right? I think for a lot of us, there is that, right? There's this environment that's very traditional that we're working in. We're used to rules. We like structure. And then there's this other part of us that wants the edge or that wants something that's a little bit out there, right? A little bit more, I don't know whether it could be so many different things. So I love that exercise of defining the style. I think the rule of 3 is a nice convenient number. It's not overwhelming and yet it's enough to give you some texture. So love that. And I gather that is part then of the women that you're working with coming up with what you've described as the authentic style blueprint. And I think this might also be a great point. You and I spoke the other day about some of the work that you've been doing, right? To become a stylist, right? It's not as though you just wake up one day and you've got all the tricks and tools and everything. I mean, you've been doing this for years, right? I mean, I understand you've been taking courses, you've been studying style. What does that journey look like?
Yeah, it's kind of ebbed and flowed and turned and twisted. Because when I first started, I told you that brand that I fell in love with was Cabby, which is a brand a lot of people know. It's an LA-based designer. Well, then I just became a Cabby stylist for 6 years because I just wanted to keep getting the Cabby clothes. And so I really didn't have any aspirations at that time to be a stylist or have this be any kind of a full-time gig. It was just fun and interesting. But then over time, it took on a little bit more meaning when I started to see both my friends that would come to me frustrated and then their reaction once they felt good in their clothes. And so that kind of got me intrigued, but I was still working full time. And so it's kind of been just this, I got to the point where it was just the little voice in my head was getting louder and louder about the style piece, which I knew I couldn't do everything. And there's only so much I could do in the off hours. I will say I'm a lifelong student. And so I really like to learn. And so, yes, I've taken probably every stylist course out there. I've been fascinated with business coaching. And so I've done a lot of that. And so I think it's, as lawyers, we like to have a lot of training, right? And so I've done all that. I feel like I've done everything I could to prepare. And so then it was ready to just go. So I think that's how it worked.
I love that. And I think for everyone who's got that dream of something else, right? Sort of the plan B dream. I don't know if you hear that a lot. I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
It's something that you can keep working on in the background. And I just love that you have a perspective on style where, as you mentioned at the very beginning, right? The breadcrumbs, where you've been able to weave what your professional environment is like with something that you're truly passionate about, style. You've learned the different elements, the color, the shapes, what is a style statement? How do you put all that together? So I just love that you've gone down that journey. You've done all that work, and then you can now share the benefit of that work with anybody who's interested in doing that for themselves. So love it.
Yeah. And I think one thing I've discovered in just reflecting on this and my journey and where I'm going, I think the linchpin or the through line through all of this is living an intentional life. I think when I started doing things that were different other than my traditional practice of law career, if the first job was a little haphazard, I kind of fell into legal recruiting. But there was a point when I started plotting my career and being very intentional about it. And that's how I work with my clients is we're not going to be haphazard. Let's do it and do it right, but let's be thoughtful so that you create something and then you don't have to keep recreating it. I think the thing that women struggle with style is that there's always something hanging over their head. There's no finality because they're trying, and this is not working and that's not working. When you actually take the time and be very intentional and set it out and follow a very structured path, then you get the gift of finality. Then you get the gift of loving your closet. And so to me, it's all about that intentionality and creating a wardrobe that supports your life and a wardrobe that supports who you are and bringing all that intention full circle.
I love it. And one of my style statement words is structure.
that totally makes sense
word.
for you.
I love structure in my life. I love structure in style.
Yes.
I also think, as you were talking, I was thinking about how style is this thing that is presented to us as so cyclical, right? Every fall, there's a new lineup. Every summer, there's a new lineup. So there's all this style coming at us. And instead of us being reactionary to what is presented to us, I love the idea of what you're doing, which is saying, wait a second, what if I just defined for myself what it is? And then you've got the basics, right? You've got the infrastructure in place. And if you want to incorporate something that's trendy or new or different, great, you can bring that in, but it doesn't kind of undermine or it doesn't kind of like shake who you are, right? You don't have to kind of, I am imagining like a leaf in the wind, right? You are the one who dictates or sets the style, and then you weave in the trends, the accessories, whatever it is, in a way that aligns with you. So love it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you have 80% of your wardrobe is very intentional and foundational. That 20% of the trends and things that you find that you enjoy, that's just adding and breathing in new life and adding layers onto what you already have. But once you take the time to actually build a wardrobe, you're not going to be doing that. You're not going to put that same amount of effort into every season. It's going to be supporting it and bringing in little things here and there, maybe a seasonal thing because you don't have that piece in there. But the real work is done once until you change your style altogether. And then you go back through the process. But that's where that finality piece is, because you don't have to worry. You have what you need to wear for your lifestyle because we build it that way. And then you could just have fun weaving in new things.
Love it. 80-20. So let's say there's a woman out there. She's decided that she wants to completely transform her personal style, her wardrobe. At what pace do you recommend doing that, right? Is this something that you recommend doing all at once, dive 2 feet in, just get rid of everything, bring all the new in? Or do you recommend doing this a little bit over time? What are your thoughts on that?
I think to some extent it's personal preference. If someone doesn't have the risk tolerance to just go all in on something new, then maybe you can build in some pieces. You could always create a wish list of what you want to build your closet, and then you can bring in pieces bit by bit. But I also have found that I work with clients when they do keep things in the closet, they tend to want the more new things as it is. And so I think if you prefer to just start from the ground up, do it, because the reality is a lot of the pieces that you have in your closet probably weren't intentional in the first place. And so they may or may not fit for this new style you're going for. If they are, great, bring it in. And then I always help clients figure out how to style it. But I think there's something exciting about starting from scratch and building it just for you in a very intentional and curated way that I think can really help set yourself up for dressing into your future and to embodying your future self.
Love it. And we had talked a little bit earlier about budget, right? In terms of how you can approach this. And what are your thoughts on that in terms of budgeting for a wardrobe overhaul, how women maybe are spending money in ways that is not the most efficient? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, if you are looking to do a complete overhaul and you're thinking about hiring a stylist, what I would recommend is to go on a shopping freeze and not bring in new things. And that money that you would have spent when you were on the weekend with your girlfriends, or the money you would have spent because something was on sale, put that money to the side so that you can spend it very intentionally. So if you're someone that does have like a little bit here and there, but nothing that you really like, just go on a little hiatus and start building up a reserve. Because the reality is when you buy pieces that are intentional and that are going to stand the test of time, then you don't have to replace them as often. So you're going to get more cost per wear on them. And if you buy really high quality, then it's going to be a long time before you need to get a new one. And so in the end, a lot of times clients end up saving money because they're not buying clothes that are the wrong thing and still hanging in your closet, or they're not buying things because they're in desperation mode because they have an event the next day and they have nothing to wear. And they run out and they buy something and they really don't like it, but they just settle for it. And then they wear it to the event and then it goes back in the closet and they never wear it again because they don't like it. And so if you think about all of those unintentional shopping decisions that you've made in the past, and if you stop doing that going forward, then I think you can be very intentional at building up a little nest egg to go ahead and then go out and purchase a wardrobe that you love.
I love that. And as you were talking, I was thinking about my closet and how there's just so many pieces in there that were not super intentional. Maybe it's something that I bought because I needed a belt for something. And so it worked that one time, but I look at it now and I just think there's no way I'm going to wear that thing again. Or, even some of the things that I bought years ago that maybe I really loved at the time, but now they're outdated or they're just not, they don't look the same. And so I think there's a lot that we spend without being intentional. And
yes,
if we were to take that amount that we did spend and be really focused and buy the things that we truly want, then looking in the closet means we get to see options that we actually want to wear, as opposed to that, okay, there's a lot here, but none of it feels right. So I absolutely love that. Estelle, you also have talked about this purge, right? Like a closet cleanse. And
yes,
you can tell I'm in a decluttering phase of life right now because I'm kind of obsessed with this. But
I love
when you talked about it, like, you mentioned there were some things that you observed with women going through this process. Can you share that with us?
Sure. I think there's a lot of guilt that comes up around closets and clothes that we've been hanging on to that we can't seem to let go of. And they can be for a variety of reasons. It could be a sentimental reason, but it's something you're never wearing. And so it's taking up space in your closet. Or it could be you feel guilty because you spent a lot of money on something, but it no longer serves you. But there's a part of you that feels like, but I spent this money on it, so I shouldn't get rid of it. And so I think there are all these kind of limiting stories we tell ourselves that don't allow us to have permission to take out what doesn't serve us. And when we can do that, we can set those beliefs aside. What you realize is you actually then create space in your wardrobe where you can see things. And when you are very selective about what gets to stay in the closet and what comes into the closet, like we were talking about, using that style mantra, using your style statement as a guide, then you just feel this weight has been released because you no longer have these things taking up precious real estate in your closet that you don't like. And getting dressed in the morning becomes so much more pleasant and so much more fun.
Yeah. And you also mentioned that sometimes those pieces that people hold on to and they're trying to match it with their new items, and then that doesn't work, right? They realize this piece that I've been holding on to, that I've been trying to buy for with other clothing, it's like they want to get rid of that initial clothing to move into the new style of theirs. And so I also found that to be really interesting, right? Like this idea that sometimes there are things that we just have to let go and move forward.
Well, and I don't necessarily prescribe to the whole Marie Kondo thing, but I think there is a certain extent of appreciating that something served a purpose. For example, I appreciate that the suits I wore on campus interviews, they served a purpose, but they're not who I am now. So they need to go, and someone else can appreciate them that's at that stage in their life or is at that stage of their career. And so you haven't failed in any way and you're not being wasteful. It's just served its purpose. So you can almost say, okay, well, I'm glad this was able to serve me then, but it could serve someone else now who would live in their closet and they would enjoy it.
Love it. So I often hear about capsule wardrobes.
Uh-huh.
And I've looked at my fair share of capsule wardrobes online. I would love to know how you would define a capsule wardrobe and how you would recommend going about finding the best pieces.
Yeah, I look at a capsule wardrobe. It's just a small subset of clothes that easily mix and match together. And people define capsule wardrobes in a lot of different ways. Sometimes people will define it by the number. Here are 20 pieces in a capsule wardrobe. Here are 40 pieces. And there's no defined number that everyone agrees on when it comes to capsule wardrobes. A way I like to think about capsule wardrobes in particular is whenever you are traveling. So one of the things my clients love is when I help them get prepared for a conference, a 3-day conference. And when you create a capsule travel wardrobe, what you're doing is you're having a number of tops and bottoms that seamlessly mix and match with each other so that you don't have to bring your entire closet with you. But at the same time, let's say you're wearing a pair of black pants twice. No one is going to go, oh, you're wearing those black pants 2 days ago, because you're going to be totally styling it differently. And it's about maximizing what you have. And when you have a very functional closet that does that easily, then that's where you get the variety that people want from their wardrobes. People hate wearing the same 3 outfits on repeat. But you have a lot of neutrals and a few statement pieces in your closet. You can make so many different outfits. And then you throw in accessories, which are, earrings or scarves or really fun shoes. Just the possibilities are endless. You need a core base that includes your basics and your neutrals, but then you need those pieces that are your personality pieces. And that can be colors or it can be patterns, things that speak to you. And then you can create a myriad of outfits from it.
Love it. Love it. Another question that I see often, I follow you on LinkedIn and all the places. And today, actually, after we're recording, you're doing a whole webinar on, dressing for, I think it's the postmenopausal or the perimenopausal.
Yes.
And,
yes.
As a woman who has had children, I've gone through changes, right? It's not necessarily that you change drastically in size, but things move around. And so the wardrobe that fits you in your 20s may not fit you after you've got children. And that wardrobe may not fit you after you're in perimenopause and all those other wonderful things. And so how do you recommend dealing with that, right? When you have a changing body shape, children, perimenopause, how do you recommend dressing yourself?
Yeah, I think it's really important to assess your body shape. And if you don't know how to do that, you can hire an expert to do that. But it's a matter of seeing where your body has changed over time. And as women, we go through so many changes, primarily due to hormones. You think about your body going from pre-pubescent to a teenager, and then after you have a child, and I'm now in the throes of perimenopause and things are changing. So I think it's about getting clear of how your body has changed and then figuring out a way to dress those new changes instead of trying to put your new body into old clothes that don't work for it anymore. And so if that's something that's confusing or it's hard for you to do, which I totally get because no one teaches us this, then that's when you can get a course or hire someone to help you with that. But understanding what your body is now and which silhouettes are flattering for it now is going to enable you to feel really good and confident in your skin. And so you just need to figure out how to do that where you are right now in your body without punishing yourself and saying not until you lose 10 pounds or not until you get rid of your chubby waist. It's like, no, you can dress it now, feel good now, because you still have to get dressed and you don't want to feel bad. And you can still go look for new things, or you can still look to lose weight if losing weight is your goal. But it's just accepting where you are, loving your body for what it is, and then deciding what you want to do in the future on purpose.
Yeah, I think that's such a strong and important message because I think, and I know I've fallen into this trap of looking back and saying, well, wouldn't it be great if I could wear that style again? Like there's like pencil skirts. I used to love wearing pencil skirts. Now my hips have just changed. I can't wear pencil skirts the same way, right? It just looks funny. And so it's kind of like the closet, right? Instead of hanging on to those old things that, with the hope that one day magically I'll just happen to put it on and, my bones have moved around. Right. Accepting the reality that that's not happening. And then in the future, like what is the style of the future? Like where do you want to be professionally? The future you, how is she dressing? And how is she dressing for who she is with the body that she has versus trying to kind of mix and match, right? The future professional with the previous. It's just all too confusing.
Well, and I think having an open mind that you're not the same person you were 20 years ago in a lot of ways, and your body probably one of them as well. And that's okay. And how can we take what we have right now and make the best of it and the most of it and feel amazing now?
I love it. And Estelle, we mentioned, or we were talking about closet cleansing, closet purges, and we are doing this recording in July, and we will go live, I believe, beginning of August, which is great. And in September, I understand you're doing a training, and it is open to all the women lawyers and women professionals who would like to attend the training. And quite frankly, I would love to be there because I need help.
Yay! I would love for you to be there.
In my closet, I will definitely be
there.
And so for those of us who are listening who would like to join, can you maybe tell us a little bit about that? And I know the link isn't live yet, but how they might be able to work with you, how they might be able to join you for that wonderful and much needed cleanse in the fall.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to be hosting a fall closet cleanse challenge. I've done several of these in the past, and they're so much fun. It's going to be free. Any female attorney can join, or if you're a female entrepreneur or executive, you can join as well. I just tend to have more female attorneys that are in there. But what it is we're going to be taking what can be a very daunting task of cleaning out your closet, but chunking it down into manageable bite-sized tasks that you do over the span of a week. And I'm going to have a Facebook group just of the women in this challenge. And we're going to have small tasks that we do each day leading up to the full closet cleanse, which will be on a Saturday. But what I have found is sometimes the idea of cleaning out your closet may not send you, make you feel great. It may send you into deep, despair. But if you're in there with a group of other women who are rolling up their sleeves with you, and they're going in and tackling their closet, there's an energy that's contagious, and it's really fun. People will find random things, as you do when you do closet cleanse, and they'll post photos of, I don't know why I was holding on to this from, when I was 12 in my closet, and everyone laughs and like, guess what I found? And it's just this camaraderie and this support that is, you're in there doing it together, and the women are just fun. And I feel like having that community behind you, cleaning out their closets with you, is an energy that you don't have if you're just doing it yourself. And so I love to do these cleanse challenges. I usually do them a couple times a year. So we'll be doing this in the fall. So it'll be after hopefully your kids are back at school, and you can focus on you and get your closet ready. And I recommend you do a closet cleanse, every season, but at least once or twice a year. And that way you can maintain the pieces that are in there truly have earned their way in there. Does that explain kind of how the cleanse works?
It's so amazing. And those who are listening don't have the benefit of seeing you, but the smile on your face, seriously, it is electric. And I mean, I kind of like cleaning, sort of, but I don't get like super excited about it. I feel like I would be excited about going into my closet with you and with everyone else who is there. Hopefully everyone who's listening will be there, and just doing that as a group, right? Like having clear steps, it not being overwhelming. And by the end of a Saturday, feeling like I've done the cleanse. Like this is done. It was enjoyable. It was fun. I did it in community. I found some treasures. And now I'm ready to move forward. So I love that. And for anyone who wants to join, I gather they can connect with you on LinkedIn. They can join. You still have your Facebook group, which is, maybe you want to share a little bit about your Facebook group?
Sure. So my Facebook group has about a little bit over 2,000 female attorneys and executives in there. And I do a lot of style tips in there, all related to professional women and the challenges they're having. I'll do Facebook Lives in there and various trainings. And it's just an amazing community of women that are cheering you on, who are sharing challenges, and it's a safe space. That's a private Facebook community. So I love my Facebook group. It's called Powerhouse Style. So I'll give you the link. And then I'm also on LinkedIn. So I really wasn't on LinkedIn very much until I went full-time in my business and realized that LinkedIn is no longer just an online resume. It's an amazing community of people. So I usually post in there about 5 times a week. So you can follow me. I do a LinkedIn newsletter that you can get in the LinkedIn space. So yes, and when I have the challenge, I will be sure to talk a lot about it so that people will have an opportunity to sign up, bring their friends on, and, tackle this task together. Because there's nothing better than the weight off your shoulders when you walk into your closet and everything in there is clothes you love. And you no longer are being blocked by clothes that are too small, that are mocking you, that you don't like. They're gone. And there's a lot of freedom to that.
It's almost like they're talking to you, right?
Oh yeah. They're like, yeah.
Your closet is speaking to you.
You got those clothes that are like, not even after a good stomach bug will this thing ever fit you. No one needs that in the morning or anytime.
They've got
to go.
Love it. Estelle, it has been such a pleasure having you on the podcast today. Thank you for joining us again, right? This has been amazing.
This has been great.
It's been so great. Anything you'd like to share before we wrap up our call today?
I think the main thing that I want to share is if you're listening to this and if you got a little glimpse of excitement about the idea of having a leveled up style, know that you deserve it. You don't have to earn it. You deserve it as a birthright. And it's actually the best thing you can do for your happiness and your career, to create an intentional style that you love and see what happens when you do.
I love it. Thank you again, Estelle. It's been so great having you. And thank you, everybody who joined us here this week. I will see you at the Closet Cleanse in the fall.
That sounds awesome. I love it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Sure. Bye.
If you enjoyed today's show and don't want to miss an episode, subscribe and follow the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you haven't already, please leave a rating and review. Your feedback will help me create a podcast that's tailored to your needs and goes straight to the heart of what matters to you. For instructions on how to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast, visit www.thejoyfulpractice.com/podcast launch. See you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast. If you want more information, visit www.thejoyfulpractice.com. See you next week.